Hello, beautiful people. On this video, we're going to talk about the role of personal values in leadership. Do values really impact how you lead, or are they just nice words on a poster? If your values aren't visible in how you lead, are they really your values? And I want to help you discover the missing link between personal alignment and professional credibility. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to be able to turn your personal values into a leadership advantage, not just in theory, but in practice. So let's dive into the idea of values and how they can be actually an accelerant for your leadership capacity and your leadership success. When we think about values, we think about the nice posters that are written on the wall of our organization because they're labeled values. Now, in some organizations, those values are fun and interesting and fantastic, but they're not necessarily yours. You can adapt some of them as your own, but I would really encourage you to look at your own values. What do I stand for? What matters to me? What do I want to be known for? So on a personal level, that could be, I want to be known for integrity. I want to be known for telling the truth, doing what I say I will do, and asking for what I need. I want to show up as someone who is whole and complete in themselves under pressure and at all times. I want to show up with integrity. Another one can be, I really value speed. Speed might be something that's very important to you. You might have a level of impatience around getting stuff done, and that might be useful for you to recognize and turn into a value. Another one might be, I really value excellent customer service. Depending on what you value, it's very useful for you to actually sit down and declare that for yourself. Write it down, start talking to other people about it, and begin to start recognizing your own values in terms of, this is who I am, this is what I stand for. So for me, my values are, integrity is one of the highest ones. I want people to be able to interact with me knowing that I am going to be the same person holding similar standards and similar values and being honest and direct about things, and that I'm going to be consistent. And so integrity in terms of holding my truth and being honest about things is really important to me. One of the other things is, I'm an impatient person. I'm working hard on it, I promise. But patience is not one of my better virtues. And so I love things that are happening quickly. I get pleasure out of making things happen faster than people might expect them to. And I also look for teams who want to play that game with me. And I'm aware if I'm interviewing someone and they like things to do things slowly and methodically, that they're probably going to be better on another team than they might be on mine. So I recognize where my values are useful for my leadership and also potentially not useful for other people. So as you think about your values, think about how they work for you, what they mean for you, what you stand for, how you want to be known in the world. I would add to that, two of my other ones are joy and kindness. So if we're not having fun, I'm really wondering why we're playing. So one of the things that I look at is not, are we having fun like rah having fun, but are we having fun like we're enjoying each other, we're appreciating each other, we're grateful for each other, we're doing big ambitious things together, we're doing things together that we could never have done independently. Are we learning new things? Learning is one of my greatest values and it's a big joy for me. So when you think about your values, again, think of them in terms of what matters to you and what brings you joy and what you stand for. As you go through that process, now let's talk about how you translate those into something that is valuable for enhancing and augmenting your leadership. So once you know what your values are, recognize a couple of things. You might be you with those values when everything is going fine. Who are you when you are under an enormous amount of pressure? And a lot of us will respond and behave very differently when we're under pressure. The game here is, can you recognize those values and can you appreciate those values and can you be consistent and in integrity with yourself across the board when you are supporting those values under an enormous amount of pressure. So let me give you an example. You've got a huge deadline on a project. You are working hard to be able to deliver on it. You've got 30 people on your team and they all seem to be running late. Are you the person who has the integrity to be able to have the difficult conversations with people and with your customer for the project? Are you the person who has the integrity to be able to have those conversations? Or are you the person who's just going to start yelling and shouting at everyone and getting impatient and frustrated and disrespectful? So if you're going to hold a value for yourself, look at how realistic it is to be able to hold that value through the whole cycle of things are going great, things are beginning to fall apart, the wheels are coming off the bus, everyone's breathing down my neck, my customers are shouting at me. What are the values that you can hold through a full cycle of everything's going wonderfully to things are falling apart when you're under a tremendous amount of pressure? And see whether or not you're being honest and realistic about your own values, because people will gravitate towards the people who make sense for them, who can be consistent for them, who can hold the course for them, and who will, what I refer to as fly cloud cover for people in terms of making it easier for them to do your jobs because you're holding the space for them to do their best work. The other thing to remember is that as you think about your values, recognize that what you value changes what you listen for. So for example, if you value autonomy, you listen for people who consider that to be important and you bring those people around you because you know that together you're going to be able to work more effectively because you value giving those people freedom and those people value you giving them freedom. And if you give them freedom, they also recognize the responsibility that comes with that. And so they might coordinate more carefully and more tightly with you. If instead you value harmony, lots of people want to work on a team where there's a lot of harmony, and that is absolutely wonderful. If you value harmony at the expense of honest conversations and declaring breakdowns, then you are being inconsistent for people. So think about how your values work across the whole spectrum of the leadership work that you're doing and how you show up with coherence and integrity in the middle of doing that. The other important thing to think about as you think about values is that values really show up in action. So if I stand up on a podium and say, I value transparency, and I actually ran a whole department off the idea of transparency for quite a long time and with a lot of success for the people on the team. If I stand up and I say I value transparency, but my actions don't coincide with that, people are going to see, sense, feel, recognize that incongruity. And they're going to distrust me as a result of that. So as you think about your values, be super honest with yourself and really look at how do I stay in my values with integrity in a way that I am trusting myself, in a way that opens the door for other people to trust me. If I'm all over the map and I say I believe in one thing and my actions reveal something different, then I'm going to get myself into a lot of trouble in terms of people building trust with me. The other thing to remember, and we talk about promises in a number of other videos, but the other thing to remember in this is that your values show up in your promises. What are you promising to do at any given time? And how are you managing those promises? And how do those promises align with your values? So for example, if somebody asked me to do a project that had a very high operations aspect of it, and that had to do with systematizing things, being very predictive about how a process would work, designing processes that will always have the same outcome, designing for a very high level of consistency and quality and delivery, and doing that consistently over a period of time where there were thousands and thousands of transactions coming through that process. I'm probably not your person, because I just said, one of my values is granting people autonomy. Another one of my values is speed. I love speed. Another one of my values is customer service and high levels of high-touch customer service. So if you're looking for something to be done on huge numbers, highly consistently, with great speed, over a period of time where people can actually work in that system for a long time doing the same thing every single day, I'm probably not your person. I've written a book about innovation. I like the innovation process. I like the chaos of it. I like the opportunity associated with it. So when you think about your values, recognize your values also steer you towards what are the real promises that you should be making inside your organization that are congruent with those values and that will have you show up as a trustworthy person with a high level of integrity. And some of it requires that you're brutally honest with yourself. I'd love to be that person. Those people are the backbone of organizations. But I have to be honest with myself and recognize that that's not me. That's not even necessarily my skill set, even though it may be yours. So think about how your values influence the promises that you make, that you want to make, and see how they fit with your values. So you're now showing your values in action to your team and showing that level of integrity and trustworthiness. Leading from your values creates a level of resilience, a level of cultural resilience, a level of team resilience. Because your team knows where they stand. They know who you are. They know what you stand for. They know what matters to you. And they start asking themselves those questions. And you can help them with that process, obviously, as you're doing this yourself. But what happens over time is you begin to see that people create higher levels of trust with each other. That's why organizations try to put their values up on a wall and have people rally around those values. As a leader, you need to be speaking and acting your values and making sure that they are in some ways congruent with your organization. I worked for a fantastic organization for a while that one of their core values was assume best intent. And I love the idea of assuming best intention, because what it means is that you are working to trust the person, even though you may not understand what they're trying to do. You're going to be curious about it and you're going to ask the questions because you have this context of assuming best intention. And I think that's a wonderful thing to do in terms of really learning how to be kind and patient with people and to learn to be able to engage in co-invention very powerfully with them. Assuming best intention is a great one. So that was always up on the wall of the organization, and I've always considered that to be important, so it was easy for me to be able to see where the congruence of values happens. As you start thinking about that for yourself, remember that what you're doing there with that integrity and that reference of your values back to the corporate values is you're building a level of resilience within your own team. Hugely important if you're going through any kind of change process, hugely important if you have big deadlines, hugely important if you want to be able to get things done, which would be anywhere you work. As you go through the process of analyzing your own values, be patient with yourself, give yourself time to see what really sits with you, but recognize that understanding, articulating, writing, refining, applying your values is going to accelerate your leadership capacity significantly. As you go through the process, I wish you the very best of luck with it. One of the things that you can do to help you think about this is to do my Get Promoted assessment. There's a link down in the comments. It is www.getpromotedassessment.com. There's also a link on my website. Do that assessment for yourself. It'll help you do a level of reflection that will really help you with thinking about what are my values and what do I stand for. Go out there, be someone with a high level of integrity, and come back and let me know how this works for you in the comments. I'd love to hear about how it's going for you. Thank you and good luck.